This is the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Happy birthday, Zero.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. How old are you? Or do you not want to divulge any personal information at this time? We'll assume you're 25. How's that?
Yeah, that'll work for me.
Great. Happy 25th, Zero. Very good, very good. Well, Zero, I did probably one of the cruelest things I could do to somebody on their birthday, and what that was is I had them review and watch the 2022 comedy sequel, Clerks 3, starring Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson, directed by Kevin Smith. Before we get started with the review, Zero, what is your familiarity with Kevin Smith's films?
I've seen the first Clerks, saw Mallrats, saw little bits of Chasing Amy and Dogma, saw Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and that one has a soft spot in my heart, mostly from just some of the wacky humor and everything. Never got to see Clerks 2, and then I saw the Jay and Silent Bob reboot that was an Amazon Prime exclusive, and God, what a train wreck.
Oh my God, that was hard. I didn't laugh once in that movie, and a sneak preview as to what my review is going to be like in this one. But yeah, that was awful. Oh my God. Being somebody who was from New Jersey and was into film, I guess it was inevitable that I would gravitate towards Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith's story is basically he came from a low-income town in New Jersey, and he took a shot at going to film school, and then he took a shot at making a film, which was Clerks, and he made it big. It's actually a really interesting story. And what makes Kevin Smith have, I think, a huge fan base is not just his movies, which is a certain type of people who like those movies. It's also his story and himself, because as much as I criticize his work, and I will criticize his work, but as much as I do, I like Kevin Smith the person. I like his story. I like how he acts. I like the personality that he is. I personally think he's become a better recantor and podcaster than he is a filmmaker, because the way he does his podcast and how personable and entertaining he is there, I think is really good. I think he's actually very good at that. But when it comes to filmmaking, he leaves a lot to be desired. I've seen all of his films. I was a fan of his films. I saw Mallrats first and hated it. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I was like, this is terrible. And then I saw Chasing Amy, and I was like, wow, who did this? I was like, the guy who did Mallrats? I was like, wait a minute. And then a friend of mine was like, well, you've seen Clerks, right? Like, I've never seen Clerks. Oh, you got to see Clerks. Saw Clerks. I was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And then, Dogma was good. Like you, I have a soft spot for Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back because of how stupidly humor it is. Don't be so suburban, But saw Jersey Girl. I liked it for what it was. I think honestly his funniest movie is Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Like, I think that is one of his funniest films. But then after that, his filmmaking went boom, right to the cellar. And to be fair, his next 3 films were horror films, and I am not a horror film fan. So, okay, I will grant that at least. But like you mentioned, Jay and Silent Bob reboot was awful. I didn't laugh once. I thought it was horrible, and it wasn't even funny in a wow, this is so bad it's funny. No, it was just bad, and it was not funny in the slightest. And even the dramatic parts really did not sit well with me. My mentality with Kevin Smith is this: if he would get somebody to direct his scripts, I think he would be probably one of the better screenwriters out there. But because he directs his films, and he is a bad director, because of the way he directs, it really lessens the impact and the likability of his films to a certain extent. Because either he's too safe, or he's too rudimentary, and he just lacks any sort of cohesive style in any of his films. Period. Like, I remember watching an IMDb video on him, and they were talking about his directorial style, and I'm like, what directorial style? And I watched the video, and it's all writing. It's strong female characters, verbose dialogue, pop culture references. Nothing about his direction. It's all his writing. But there's a good reason why. He is a good writer. I just think he needs to stick to writing and give somebody else the directorial duties. But he refuses to do that, and that's kind of why I think his films tend to not do very well. Because I think on a writing scale, he's very good. But on a directing scale, he's awful. I think he's one of the worst, to be completely honest. And some people might find that harsh, but I think it's the truth at this point. So, you want to get to the review of Clerks 3?
Yeah, it's gonna be a slog. I just feel it in my bones.
Oh, man. Okay. Can we go positive first? I do have some positive things. I think the drama in the movie is effective. I think when it gets serious, it's actually a pretty effective film. And mainly, I think it's more to do with Brian O'Halloran than anything else. Like, Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson both have their dramatic points in the movie. And I think O'Halloran is much more effective in it than Anderson is. But, and this is the thing that kind of surprised me about Clerks 2 as well. Because Clerks 2, I didn't find very funny either. But there was like one dramatic scene in the movie where I was like, wow, that was actually pretty effective. That was pretty good, actually. And that was really it. The donkey scene was okay, I guess. But the rest of the movie was like, ugh, all right, whatever. But yeah, like the dramatic parts, we won't get into spoilers as to where the drama is, but those aren't bad. They're actually pretty good, I would say.
They're good. I just the story just was, I guess you could say it was just like, oh, I already see where this is going within the first like 10, 15 minutes. It's like, oh, I know how this is gonna go.
Yeah. Now that we got the positive down, so let's just get right into it. I guess the question I have to ask you is this. How many times did you laugh during this movie?
Not very many. I can't even remember.
I think I laughed maybe twice. And not like, oh my god. Like, it was like, yeah, okay. It was kind of like a tepid, like, yeah, all right. The issue I have with this movie is that Smith recycles the same jokes over and over and over again. And the story basically is this. Randall has a heart attack in the beginning of the movie. And when he comes to after he survives it, he decides that he's done nothing in his life and he wants to make a movie. And what does he decide to make a movie on? Well, what he knows best, his life. And if you know Kevin Smith, you kind of see where this is going. And the thing that I thought that was... It's lazy, but it could work. What he basically did in this movie was say, you know what would be funny? What if Randall just reshot Clerks 1? And that's his movie, basically. So he's pretending, basically, that the movie is about Randall shooting his life when he was younger, but recycling the same scenes as Clerks 1. So basically, all the jokes are kind of recycled in this, where you get the same scenes from Clerks, the same jokes, the dance, everything in this is the same to a certain extent, which there could have been an interesting comedic way to deal with that just comes off as lazy in its execution.
It definitely seemed like that. It was just like, okay, we're retreading a lot of the same jokes.
Right.
God, there could be... I mean, maybe you can try to respect the original joke, but maybe iterate on it, maybe do something with it. Nope. Okay, we're just doing the joke shot for shot. Okay, whatever.
And you can do this intelligently too. Like the aspect of what they're doing, what Smith is doing here, again, not original, but there is a creative way to do this. I mean, is it really realistic to think that Randall remembers every exact detail that happened in these things that happened in that movie? Why not change it up a little bit? Maybe say like, oh, this is how I remember it, and even like a stupid example, like Randall is actually very buff and handsome. Like, like something different to make it be like, oh yeah, because Randall is okay. Just recycling the same scenes from the first movie and second movie, it just doesn't work in this. To me, at least, it just makes like the second act and the third act seem like very rote if you've already seen the first movie. Because all they're doing is just basically, oh, we're going to shoot that exact scene. I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. Whatever. That's kind of how I looked at it. I was like, that's all you're doing? Like, that's... And the jokes are basically, oh, look at Randall trying to shoot films with these nitwits. And it's not funny, really. It really is not. Because the other problem, too, is that Randall is just not likable in this movie. He's... In Clerks 1... Randall and Dante, like, they're likable to a certain extent, but you excuse their annoyances because they're young. They're in their 20s, like, they're early 20s, I think. And, yeah, like, Randall is a don't care, verbose kind of Neanderthal, I guess, who doesn't care who he offends. Like, that's the character. Fine. And that's okay for a 20-year-old. These characters are 50 in this movie, and it's like they haven't changed. There's no growth. There's nothing there. I think that's a big issue I have.
Like, anyone who's familiar with the Askewniverse movies, you already know Randall's personality, and it doesn't change. It doesn't get any dynamic growth. It's just, okay, it's Randall, and I mean, by the time the growth does happen, it's too late. And it's just like... Wasted potential.
Right. And this is okay in Clerks 1. One, because they're young, and two, that wasn't really the purpose of the first Clerks. These two characters are really supposed to be a window to see these ridiculous things happening in the store. So I get that. But you're now at Clerks 3, and you need more depth in these characters. And at this point, there is very little depth in the four principal characters, which is Dante, Randall, Jay, and Silent Bob. All four of them are the exact same as they were in the first movie. Especially Jay in this one as well. This is going to sound really mean, and I don't mean to be. It is hard to see Jay Muse play Jay the same way he played Jay in the first movie and all the rest of the movies when he looks so old.
Yeah.
Like, it's unfair, it's kind of ageist, I get it. But when you see a guy who literally has age lines on the side of his eyes, and he looks older and more... He does look a little healthier, I will give him that, but he definitely looks much older. It's just not funny hearing somebody who is almost 50 years old saying these same lines. It's just not. It's actually kind of fucking sad to a certain extent. Like, without having the personality of the person that you can identify with, which you don't have, because even though Jay and Silent Bob have been in multiple View Askew movies, he's added no depth to these characters at all. So at that point, like, you can excuse the depth if the things that were happening were funny. But they weren't. There really weren't any funny things in this movie. I think the entire premise might have been interesting in a meta perspective to a certain extent, and I'll get to that in spoilers. But when it comes to just the comedy aspect, it falls horrendously flat. I got out of this going, like, and we'll get into spoilers, but I got out of this going, I really hope this is the last time I see another Clerks movie. I hope this is the end. Mercilessly, I hope this is the end.
The last I heard, there was another Mallrats movie that back in 2020, Kevin Smith was just like, yeah, so that original Mallrats sequel that I was making, okay, I know it got put on hold, but in 2020 he announced that the project is now back in action, and now that Clerks 3 has wrapped up, and he's like, yeah, so yeah, just the new Mallrats movie is going to be Twilight of the Mallrats, so might see a lot of these faces again.
From what I remember hearing, though, this was probably in 2018, 2019, but you're right, that was put in the back burner until Clerks 3 was made. But from what I heard back then, though, is that no one would accept it as a movie, but they would take it as a TV series for like Hulu or Netflix or whatever. Like, I think that's where he was going at that point. So, and he won't be able to do it with Shannon Doherty. I already know that. I don't know. I think I'm not a fan of Mallrats, so I'll say that right off the rip. But do you really want to see like people who were in their late 40s, 50s hanging out in a mall? I don't. It was barely funny in '96. Like, I don't know. Oh man. Honestly, I think Kevin Smith should just try drama out. Just try a dramatic movie. Write it, give it to a director, see how it goes. He might find that the way he writes works with Hollywood drama pretty well. And with a good director, it might be successful. I mean, I'm one of the few people who think this, but I like Jersey Girl. Jersey Girl was good. I thought Jersey Girl was cute. I think he really needs to take a look at his oeuvre now and just say, I can't keep retreading everything I did in my 20s. I just can't. I need to evolve. I need to grow up. I need to grow out of this. And I think he's scared to, because it's the only way he knows success to a certain extent. Because he still talks this way in his podcasts, but he's entertaining people on this podcast. So I kind of get it in that sense. But with his movies, he needs to evolve. Even the best filmmakers, when they get success early and they get older, they evolve what they're doing. They do different stories. They do different things. They try different genres. They evolve. It's scary, I get it, but I think Kevin Smith would actually, it would do him some good to do that. I guess really, we talked about how we did not laugh. Can we get into direction, I guess? The direction's terrible. I hate the way it's blocked, because it's like Smith just concentrates on, okay, here's these two characters talking. Edit. Here's these two characters talking. Edit. Here's these two characters talking. Edit. It's constantly that, and it's just like, oh my god, do something else, please. Please, stop. And I think this, again, just proves to me that I think someone needs to take away the director's chair from Kevin Smith, essentially. Even if it's his own movies, take it away.
A lot of the scenes were just kind of muddy.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then, of course, it was kind of funny where it gets to the whole, like, bit where just Randall ends up kind of upset where the movie's going. And then, of course, that's when Dante kind of goes, well, I've got an idea for your director of photography. Just get Silent Bob to do it. And then it's just like they bicker and bitch, and then of course Randall uses his usual wisecrack. That guy, he never says a damn thing. And then that's when just he breaks his silence, and he's just like, yo, man, I think this is gonna be better in black and white. And I was just like, well, yeah, this looks like we're gonna go ahead and retread Clerks 1.
Yep, pretty much.
So black and white it is.
Yeah. Performances, I like Brian O'Halloran in this. He's good. But that's about it. I think Jeff Anderson's pretty grating in this. Jay and Silent Bob are Jay and Silent Bob. I mean, it's just worse because they look so much older now. The guy who played Elias was really annoying in this. I mean, really annoying.
God.
Another one-note character that literally has one personality trait, and that's it. Oh God, just stop. I think Brian O'Halloran, but in the dramatic parts, dealing with his wife and stuff like that, I think he's good in that sense. But when it comes to comedy, falls flat completely.
Everyone's just kind of everyone, and just the actor playing Elias annoyed the shit out of me every time his face was on the screen. I was like, oh God, this guy again with his one note, "Hail Jesus" or "Hail Satan." It's like, I get it. Your bit is that you're a hyper devoted person to whatever or schwacked out religious cause that's tied with crypto financing that you're involved in. We get it.
Yeah, but like in Clerks 2, the role that he was playing was okay, because like the kid was like 18, 19, but he has the same personality from Clerks 2 that he had at Clerks 3, and the character is 36. And that right there is like a huge problem. It's like, so there was no growth. There was nothing that the character evolved from. Maybe, yeah, sure, maybe he's hyper-religious, but more stuff didn't happen? Anything? No? Oh, okay. It's like, all right. Like, that I think that's a huge problem with this movie. You clearly are making the case that these guys are older with what happens in the movie, but they don't act older. They still act like they're in their 20s. And it just comes off as sad. It comes off as kind of pathetic. And the movie doesn't portray these characters as sad and pathetic. They try to portray them as these are cool people who are down their luck, and they're people that you want to, sympathize with, root for. And I'm like, no, I don't. It's like, I hate these characters. Stop. So, yeah. All right, we're going to spoilers in Clerks 3. If you have not seen Clerks 3, you can stop and come back when you're ready. We will get to spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I have a ton of stuff that I can talk about that I have problems with. We talked a little bit. Oh, God. We talked a little bit about the problems with Randall just retreading Clerks 1 and how annoying I thought that was. So we kind of got into that pre-spoilers. I mean, so if you want to dive in a little more into that, we could. Do you want to, or do you think we said enough on that?
I think we mostly just treaded it. It's just kind of sad with Randall that, just now that he's older, he's still just kind of the same, this sort of like offensive red-blooded American character. And it's just like, we get Randall's shtick. We've gotten his shtick since like Clerks 1 and 2. Just, you got no growth on this. And by the time the growth happens and his best friend Dante dies at the end, it's just like, wow, just he gets some growth and it's too damn late. Mm-hmm. What a waste.
So let's get right into the end of the movie, which is basically that Dante dies from the same thing that Randall had in the beginning of the movie, which is a heart attack. And that scene could have been a lot more effective if these characters were written much more likable. But in the end, it just was like, oh, the film's almost over. Whew, thank God. It's like, the emotional impact is gone in that. Like, I mean, gone. I was like a part of me was like, oh, it's good that Dante is finally sticking up for himself, and he dies? What? Like, wait a minute. What? I was like, oh, okay, sure. It comes off more manipulative than really emotionally resonant in this, because it's like, oh, don't you feel bad for Randall now? No, I kind of feel good for Dante. That doesn't have to listen to him anymore. And some will say like the growth of these characters. Oh, they own the Quick Stop now. It's like they're still the same characters. They still hate their job. So you're telling me that they now own the Quick Stop. That's better, even though they still hate their job and they still despise dealing with people the way they do. Like, okay, what growth? Yay. Like, okay, great. My big issue, like I said, the big issue I have with this is that all these characters still talk like they're 20-something when they're 50. And it just comes off really sad. Now, if this movie were to turn around and go, look at these idiots. They're still talking like they're in their 20s. This Arrested Development type of personalities. How sad and pathetic. Oh, my God. Then you kind of would have a different twist to this. But that would also piss off the people that are Kevin Smith fans and like these characters and identify with them. So he won't do that. He knows where his bread is buttered. It just puzzles me at this point where he has these characters that, for the most part, are counterculture icons to a certain, like Dante and Randall. How many times have you worked in retail and you've heard somebody say, "I wasn't even supposed to be here today"?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, these are icons at this point. Like, they're in the cultural zeitgeist in America for a certain age group. Why not evolve them to a certain extent? Make them fully fleshed characters. To just say, oh, well, they worked in 1994, why not do it again? It's like, no. It's like, because 94 is a very different time than 2022. That's why. And it just was like really puzzling to see him do this. And like Zero, we're both into gaming, okay? So we know like the concept of a throwback, where it throws back to a different time and place to butter up like nostalgia. Like gaming does it all the time. Like they'll have games that are based off of 90s RPGs that look and feel like them, something like that. And they have it in movies too, and I don't mind that. Are you into like nostalgic or a throwbacky type of movies and games?
Every once in a while, but usually just what ends up kind of like making the difference whether something resonates with me or not is if it's nostalgic but also iterates on it. It doesn't just kind of retread the same territory, just because like a great example of this is the recent releases of both Dead Space remake and the Resident Evil 4 remake. Just they're respectful to their original sources, but they do so much to iterate on things, and they even in some cases got some of the things that didn't work in the original release and have either remixed them or done something completely different with them. And that's where I think nostalgia is effective, when you kind of respect the source material, but also you build on it, you iterate on it, you just make it better, or you rework the things that didn't land on the original release and do something else with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what you're supposed to do. Like, I was thinking more along the lines of Chained Echoes, where it looks like Chrono Trigger, but it's not Chrono Trigger, like something along those lines. But another great point you had there, something that remakes the original property into something better. I'm with you there. I just surprised that Smith didn't do that. That he didn't say, oh, for Clerks 3, he's going to do that, but while I'm doing that, I'm going to criticize certain things that maybe I should or shouldn't have done in that. But all he does basically is say, you know, all the things I have been saying in like podcasts, books, interviews, and everything like that. Like the example of Dante dying at the end of Clerks. They had a little joke about that at the end. I'll throw a reference to that. Or I'll throw a reference to this. Or I'll throw it's just like, okay, I get it. You're referencing everything you've done. The problem is that Kevin Smith has been referencing his past work in movies, podcasts, interviews for 30 fucking years now. He needs to move on. Me personally, I know you're probably not as big into it as I was at a period of time, but he needs to move on. And I hope that if he makes another movie, that it is to move on from the Askewniverse. That it is to just move on from these sets of movies. I hope that's what he's going to do. He's probably not going to. He's probably going to milk his movies more and more and more until no one watches them. These characters still act like they're 20 when they're like 37, 50 years old. Like, it's just sad. It just comes off as like really sad.
It's also kind of funny too, because of course in the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, Silent Bob takes like a sort of like change in his lifestyle to lead a healthier lifestyle because of, well, some health scares. And in this movie, just they're running like a legal weed dispensary right next to the Quick Stop, and and it's just like, okay, well, what happened to this whole, Silent Bob took a turn on his health to try to be better about his health, and here they are loading up like a giant 6-foot blunt full of weed. It's like, oh my god, you don't even have continuity in your universe. What the shit?
Well, to be fair, I don't think he ever did. I mean, if we're gonna really criticize it, Jason Mewes' daughter, Jay's daughter, shows up in the funeral scene for Dante, which I thought was kind of weird, but okay, fine. But do we hear about Loki and Bartleby in Clerks? No. From Dogma.
Right.
Do we hear about Will Ferrell's character in Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back? No, we don't. Like continuity in that universe kind of doesn't matter. I think that the key problem is there's no growth in these characters, and And to expect someone to believe that someone hasn't changed from the time they're 20 to 50 is just a really hard thing to actually believe in this, especially with and like I said at the beginning of the review, for Randall, being 20 and being how he was, perfectly understandable. Being 50 and being what he was is annoying, pathetic, and just someone I just do not want to sit with for a period of time. And I think that's the big issue I have with this, is just that there's no growth to any of the characters, even though they've clearly aged. You can't pretend that these people haven't aged. You have to acknowledge it in some deeper way that they have. And some might say, well, it's a comedy. Why would you expect them to do that? Because they reference it throughout the entire, we're so much older and we haven't really done anything, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I can go on about how much of this movie I just do not like. It's better than Reboot, I guess.
Yeah, just barely.
Essentially.
Just barely. My God. I'm probably putting this squarely in like the 30% territory. Just, oh, God, just so bad. Considering some of these characters are like in their 30s to 50s and there's just no growth, no kind of like change or maturity, or in some cases the continuity from another View Askewniverse movie is completely undone. It's just like, this is kind of weird to see characters who are clearly much older and they're still acting like that they're in their 20s. It's just kind of one of those things that just kind of leaves me scratching my head going, you did some good in the Jay and Silent Bob reboot with Jay and Silent Bob kind of growing up as characters and everything, and then that's all completely done with them just owning a weed store and just acting kind of like the juvenile delinquents that they end up acting like. And of course, then you have Randall. Randall's kind of the same offensive Neanderthal that he is, and it's just like, okay, we get it. He likes to get a rise out of people. He likes to do things the way he wants to do things because he's a little bit selfish, maybe even narcissistic. We get it, but he's clearly no longer 20 anymore. Just there should be some sort of dynamic growth somewhere. And then of course by the time just Dante dies, he has his like growth moment. He's like, oh God, my best friend is dead. Oh God. It's just like, okay, well, opportunity wasted. What a friggin' waste. And now we're supposed to try to feel sorry for Randall because he lost his best friend. Too little too late. There was no growth. There's really no sympathy for Randall because he was always just kind of like I know better because I worked at the video store for most of this whole continuity, so I know better than anyone else how this movie should be, and just clearly ignoring the hell out of Dante until it's too late.
So you're giving it, what do you say, 30%?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty low. Wow. I'm probably going to go lower. I'm going to give it a 1 star out of 5. I have to acknowledge that the dramatic parts are actually good. I can't, and that's the same thing with Clerks too. There was one dramatic scene that was pretty effective. Same thing in this movie. There was one dramatic scene, and that was the one with Dante at his wife's grave. Another thing that we just did not talk about. That was actually pretty good. But other than that, the comedy was flat. The characters have no growth. There's no cleverness to the concept. He recycles the same jokes from the first movie, and I'm sorry, it's just not funny to see older men do things that 20-year-olds did, unless the movie's in on the joke, which it's not. It's just not funny. It comes off as sad. It really does. I'm giving it 1 star out of 5. I would say, unless you are a big, and I mean big, Kevin Smith fan, I would say avoid the film. I would say if you really like Clerks and you were kind of in Clerks 2, Clerks 3 ain't going to do anything else for you. So I would say skip it. And I'm going to hope that Kevin Smith just decides, you know what, it's time to do something different. I need to let these characters go. I hope. He probably won't, but I'm just going to hope that. But I think he's going to go to the well one more time, and people are just going to reject it, including his fans, and then what happens? I doubt he's listening, but dude, do something else, please. You have good writing talent. Do something else.